In the name of the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Amen. Dear Father in heaven, we thank you for this beautiful day that you give us. It's beautiful because you are always in our presence and you call us. And we every day want to be closer and come closer to you. We ask that through your Holy Spirit, you can guide us, show us how to be better stewards of everything that you provide to us, not only in our parishes, but in our personal lives, in our own bodies, in our finances, in everything that we do. May we always be good stewards of all the resources that you provide us, dear Lord. Amen. And Father, Son, Holy Spirit.
So looking to do something unique today. We'll see how it goes. So, you know, when we have the catechism for the Catholic Church, for those who've looked through that, after different sections, they have an in brief section where they have a few paragraphs that kind of summarize and review what they covered in the previous section. That's one point, and we're going to do something like that today. The other kind of context for this is there's a parish in Florida, actually in the Diocese of Orlando, called Blessed Trinity. And they have gone to the Stewardship Conference, the National Stewardship Conference, which this year's, I think, September 15th to 18th or something like that, 15th to 17th in New Orleans. They've gone every year and they take multiple people. And after going to all the different sessions they go to, they have a list of literally 30 or 40 ideas of what they can do in their next calendar year or fiscal year. So they look at those 30, 40 ideas, and then they decide which of the 5 or 10 they're going to focus on. So I thought we'd do that today. One of the presentations at our recent conference was on working on a stewardship committee and doing some things that carry stewardship forward. So what I thought is go through that PowerPoint again, but in a different way. This time, what I want you to do is we go through what's in that PowerPoint. There's probably 40 different ideas. Kind of mark to yourself in writing what page you're looking at in that PowerPoint and what thing you might want to do to work on. So you can't, I mean, obviously that presentation was a fire hose by design. It gives you a lot of ideas to go back and look at. And then we can ask about those ideas as we go through them. So it's going to be like, here's what it talks about, and then some things to think about. And if you have any questions about that particular thing. So for example, if you want to focus, and again, now you can put together your plan for July to June for next, we're getting close to the fiscal year. So maybe this is things you do for your plan from July to June. And if we can be helpful, Dave and I can be helpful as you put together your plan. You have our emails, you have my cell phone. If not, I can get it to you or Dave can give it to you. But we can work with you as you decide to prioritize of those 40 different things. What do you want to focus on? So maybe one of the things you want to focus on is do some more things with hospitality or building community. Well, there's several slides on this PowerPoint we can mark on page 8 or page 15, whatever it is. I want to get more information on those two things. Let's get some more handouts on that. Or if you want to incorporate lay witness into your stewardship 2 or 3 weekends this year, which is a pretty critical component, I noticed on a couple of slides there's reference to that, and there's probably a 10-page handout on how you do the lay witness and some actual examples. So what I want to do is go through these PowerPoint slides with that in mind to reference what's on those pages. And if you have something you want to consider doing this next fiscal year to put together your plan, then you can, get back with Dave or me or both and say, hey, and probably best is to email both of us and say, I want more information on this and I want to do this in our particular committee. Okay. So let's go through the PowerPoint, Dave, with that in mind. And we'll just reference some things. And if you guys have questions about some of these, we can answer those now or later. But be thinking, if you can do 5 or 6 or 8 things next year, which of these would you do? Let's go to the next slide. That won't be helpful to be on that one. Let's go then. So go back. A couple of things. I'll go back. Go one more forward. Yeah, next one. So, yeah. So one of the things you can consider doing is some parishes have done a stewardship away on a Sunday, different than when you do your 2 or 3 weekend renewal effort when people actually make commitment with their time, talent, treasure. If you want to do that at some point, let us know. As far as stewardship newsletter, we have a number of parishes that have done that before. If you want to start a newsletter, maybe every 6 months, every 4 months, every 3 months, you can look at that as a possibility. Those are a couple of things on that page. The other thing is if you want any of the 33 emails that we've sent since COVID with a lot of ideas, what we could do is send that to you. So that's, and if you're not on that list, if you want to be, that's mostly a Charlotte Diocese list. But if you want to be added to that, I'll do another one out probably next 2 weeks for my 34th. It gives ideas to parish, keep people engaged. If you're not on that email list and want to be, just email Dave and we can add you to that, even though you're not somebody in the Charlotte Diocese. So that's enough on that page. Any questions on that? Let's go next slide. Okay, so if you have not met with your parish council to even talk about stewardship yet, if you're kind of at the stage you want to pursue this but haven't yet, one of the first steps you can take is to meet with your pastoral council. If you want to do that, this is, and I guess we can number these, I guess, can't we, Dave, for them? Is there a way to number these slides so they know when they're looking for this, which one it is? I don't know if we have those numbered somehow. Anyhow, if not, you can make a note. We'll find out where it is. But if you want to do a presentation to your pastoral council, we can give you the 4 or 5 handouts we do for that. So if you want to do it, haven't done that yet, fine. If you haven't formed a committee yet but want to, we can work with you on your first meeting for your stewardship committee in that second item. We already talked about the conference coming up. The conference has about 80 sessions. I know a number of folks in our diocese are already going. A number of parishes are sending folks. So again, that's in September. And the one, if you want information on that, let us know. Is there a way, Dave, to put the PowerPoint so we see stuff on the side and they can see what page it is? And then we show this in addition, or is that hard to, okay, it's 4, okay. This is page 4 if you have questions about it. So if you want to meet with a parish or council and want to go through that, we can give you information there. If you want to meet with a stewardship committee for the first time, we can do that as well. And if you want to go to the conference in September, let us know about that. We can get information. So that's page 4. That's helpful. Thanks, Dave. Next one. So these are all the different topics from the stewardship Zooms. The session 1.1 is usually about the first step to get it going. We already talked about that. One of those, and number 2, is all the committee responsibilities. If you want a copy of that to go with, there's 20 or 21 that a parish does. You may do 6 or 7 your first year. And then we have multiple handouts in hospitality community building. So again, if you want to do more work in that area, then we can get some copies on that. Tons of ideas. And then you may pick some of those you want to do. The second one, let's go to the second one again, just to go through this pretty quickly. If you want to study the pastoral letter, we can get you a copy of that. I think you would probably want to get copies of session 2, number 2, as you're getting ready for the fiscal year. One of the things you want to do is you want to put together a plan from July 1st to June 30. And what you're going to do for the whole 12 months. You don't want to do this stuff piecemeal. And if you have a plan you've done for several years, you may want to make a better plan next year, or a plan that has more pieces to it. So we have 2 handouts there. I'll tell you, if anyone on this call has a stewardship plan themselves in their parish, just send that to Dave. We have another resource for that. The other thing that we can do with this, I work with a colleague in St. Louis. So if you say, listen, we want to put together a plan for July to June, have an annual stewardship committee plan. I know you have these 2 handouts you can give us again from a couple years ago. But also, if you want to have some other ideas of plans, my friend in St. Louis, I can get some from him. And then ICSC has, for members, probably about 600 different ideas in there. So we can get all kinds of ideas for a plan and want to work with us and talk that through, we can do that. If you want to do an annual report, we've had 3 or 4 parishes to do those before. We can look at an annual report. So again, these are things you can think about you want to do as you go forward with what you're about. And then lay witness again. You want to do a lay witness talk. One of the best things you do in stewardship, you can get a copy of that. If you want to do, again, you can't do all these. If you want to do a booklet, we have some examples of that. And some people have questions of stewardship in the bulletin, like a set of questions every 2 or 3 months. Any questions on any of those 9, again, you can't do everything, but you want to do something. So as you look at this review today, be thinking of what you want to try to do in July to June next fiscal year. Any questions, any of those 9 things so far that you have? Any thoughts on any of that people have? So again, if you want to pursue any of these things, that's one way to do that. Okay, the communications, there's a lot of ways you communicate stewardship throughout the year. The handout has probably about 30 different ideas you can do with that. I don't know if any of you are ready. Is anyone doing anything for children yet? Can you speak up and maybe unmute yourself? Is anyone doing anything with children, either with education in your faith formation program or in your stewardship commitment, having the youth also commit their time, talent, and treasure? Is anyone doing that yet? Doesn't sound like. So if you want to do that at some point, we can work on that arena. Bulletin announcements, I think you ought to get a copy of. We have 52s, I think, Dave, don't we? Something like that. We have quite a few of those, maybe even 104. So if you want to put stewardship thoughts in your bulletin as just a simple reminder, we can get those to you and start doing that next year.
Yeah, I send out there every 2.5 months. I send out in English and Spanish stewardship bulletin reminders that correlate with the gospel or readings of that day. So if you're not on that list and would like to be, just shoot me an email.
If any of you want to talk about ways to encourage your pastor to work with you in stewardship, again, Dave and I can be available to have conversations with you guys about that and talk about that, because that's a pretty key thing. I'm assuming no one's doing spiritual gifts at all at this point. Is anyone doing called and gifted or Gallup? Again, unmute yourself if you are. I don't know if anyone's doing that right now.
Jim, we are at St. Therese.
Yes, you're doing that. So you guys have done, you did called and gifted and Gallup both, I think, did you guys?
We actually, I and another friend have just started to write a workshop that kind of models called and gifted, and we're launching our first workshop on June 4th. So we did a pilot program last year. So I'm kind of trying to do both, living your strengths quest, and some sort of a gifted program.
Do me a favor, send me an email with that, because I'm going to probably put that in my 34th email as an idea for folks.
Okay.
And we can share with other folks who are here if you want to too. So more of those doing that. It's a great idea. So anyhow, that's something there. Now, number 3 in session 5, one of the things you have to decide for July to June, and I'm going to encourage you to do this, is one of the core things in stewardship is to do a 2 or 3 weekend effort where people commit their time, talent, and treasure. So let's say you do 2 weekends, and there's more about this going forward too. The point is you need a brochure to educate folks, and probably 2 brochures, or at least a brochure and a thing related to all the gifts that they can work on and the options they have for time and talent. It's like a booklet. So if you're going to do the first weekend, it can be a mailing goes out with a brochure, could be 6-panel, just information on stewardship. We have some examples of brochures you can use for that. Either some ideas you develop on your own, or our Sunday Visitor has some of those. But what would happen is you could have a letter and brochure go out before the first weekend. And then that first weekend, Father would talk about stewardship from the pulpit, and you have a lay witness person speak that weekend at all the masses. Ideally, one person speaks at all the masses, or at the most 2, so you don't use them all up in 1 year. And then the second weekend, there'll be a mailing go out with probably the time and talent booklet, as well as a time and talent and treasure commitment card. So it's brochure-like. And then there's a commitment Sunday people give out. So you need to have typically a brochure and a booklet to mail out to people. So if you want some examples of brochures or booklets, we can get both those to you. Stewardship can't work well with that 2 or 3 weekend commitment time period if you don't have a brochure or information piece to go with the letter. Just the letter by itself isn't typically sufficient. So 5.3, session 5, item 3, There'll be some brochures in there. I don't know if in 6-1, if your pastors, priests, associates, deacons, whatever you have as far as clergy, would be willing to look at ways to incorporate stewardship into the homilies. But we have that 3-year cycle of the gospel readings, for the most part, and a few of the readings from the Old and New Testament, that can give the pastor, or deacon, or parochial vicar an opportunity to preach about stewardship every single month, at least a little bit tied to that particular reading. Again, you can't do all of these. You may want to pick 5 to 8 you want to do next year. Another one is appreciation events for volunteers, where you find all identified volunteers and you invite them to an event. Could be as simple as some juice, some other drinks, soft drinks, and some snacks, just to bring them together and have a little thank you event. And then some people will do things outside the parish, either with volunteers, like St. Matthew has a number of people that commit to take food to people in some of the homeless shelters on particular nights. So again, this is on page 6. So any question about any of those as far as what you're looking to do? And my hope is, as you write some of these down today, and we'll send this out to you afterwards and look at it again, be thinking of what you might try to pull off in your parish July to June next year. Okay, let's look at the next one, Dave. I think on session 7, that's just a why you want to do stewardship. That's the information piece for you. You've already seen that before. Some best practices. We have some best practices from some Murphy winners. And then the volunteer, again, if you're going to do a stewardship effort this next year, which I encourage you, there's no reason to wait and not do it next year, either fall or spring. What's going to be key is once the parishioners commit their time and talent, someone's got to follow up with them to invite them to an orientation of what they're going to be doing as a lector, usher, catechist, whatever, and make sure people call them and invite them. There's some things in that arena. Number 8 is only going to work 8-1 if you have a pastoral plan for the diocese. So if you don't have a pastoral plan, it's more difficult to include stewardship in it. But if you're open to, first off, in our diocese, every parish will have to do a pastoral plan every 6 years going forward. They're on a 6-year cycle. If you're outside our diocese, want to look at a pastoral plan process, we have a pretty good one. We can send information to you about that if you want to consider that. Evaluate, you wouldn't really do until next June, so you have time to think about that later on. Number 3 is, do you want to do anything for people that are new to the parish to welcome them? Again, you can't do all these things, but if you do none of these things, you're not using your time effectively, and it's not going to be helpful. So you want to pick 5, 6, 7, 8 things. And then the session 9, just more information about stewardship in number 9, more study in number 2. Some parishes do a ministry fair where people put out all the ministries. If you have 30, 40, 50, in St. Matthew's case, 100 ministries, they can do a ministry fair. We can talk about that. Any questions about any of those in 7, 8, or 9? Let me stop for a second. Is anyone doing any of those things at this point? Maybe come off the mute. Is anyone doing any of these things right now in their parish? I know that Mooreslow's doing the spiritual gifts. Is anyone else doing any of the other things yet at this point?
Hey, Jim.
Yep.
So, you have really inspired me incredibly, and we do many of these things now because of you. But one of the things that I wanted to do is a thank you for all the stewards. I wanted to do some appreciation. And in my mind, I didn't want to do it at church, because if you do it at church, then it's the Knights of Columbus, it's the Ladies Club who are serving to appreciate everybody. So I wanted to do something outside. So here I've got this idea, I have 150 people I want to appreciate. I'm suggesting we go to some chicken place or something like that. And we offer that. And my people said to me, "You're crazy. You're inviting, hey, everyone who's a steward in St. Joseph, please come to, Cluck You Chicken, and we're going to be having this chicken for all these people in appreciation. As soon as you offer food, you'll have 300 people who come rather than 150. So now
I guess a couple things about that, because I do have some thoughts on that. First thing, you only invite those who are identifiable volunteers you have in your database. You can't invite the whole parish to that. I think that's too early. Then it could be 300 people. I think what I would do when you do a thank you event for volunteers, if they haven't told you, or if the ministry hasn't told you, they're going to be missed that year, but maybe they'll better job keep track of them. But most parishes, I think, keep a pretty good list of the ushers, the catechists, the people that read at mass, people that give out communion. So I think I'd start with those who are identifiable on a list, and then find out, to be honest with you, from the ministry heads if they're active. If someone's on the list and hasn't done any, if they're on the list of catechists, they haven't done any catechist teaching in a year, I probably wouldn't invite them. So try to find through your ministry heads who they have in the ministries that are active, and I'd invite them. Now, as far as going outside, one example of a small group, you're talking about a bigger thing. So I probably do it at a place to keep the cost down. But for instance, my wife sings in 2 choirs at St. Matthew and St. Anne. Every year in the spring, St. Anne, now they have a pretty good sized music ministry, probably 50 people, because it's different masses. They invite those people and their spouses to a restaurant, it's an Italian restaurant near South Park. It's a mall in Charlotte. They rent this whole upper room, and we have a nice lunch. And it does cost the church some money, but it invests in these folks, and these folks even want to stay more involved in the ministry because they're being thanked that way. So I think, Gene, we have had people do things outside the parish. I think if you do a sit down for 150 people, it's going to be pretty expensive. So maybe you can find a place outside where you have people come together, and maybe it's hors d'oeuvres or something that might be a little bit cheaper. But we have had, go ahead.
I was going to say, I think the mistake that we have made is that Father has announced this from the pulpit, that we want to thank. We want to thank everybody. We want to offer you something. And, I think what I hear you saying is go to the ministry heads. Who are the people who are active? Identify them, contact them.
Yep. And invite them, and then find a place big enough to hold them.
Yeah.
And maybe half the people are going to come. But there are places, and it could be a big hotel room. There's different places you can have people gather that parishes have gathered. And so you could do something outside, but what I probably would do is probably do some drinks and hors d'oeuvres, so it's not terribly expensive. There's going to be 150 people. There's going to be 30 people, or they have even 50 like this one just for the choir alone. That's more reasonable, but I think that could work well. I think a thank you event, that when it goes back to hospitality and community building we talked about, that's one of those community building things, is a thank you event. So remember, the research was pretty clear. If you do 4 or more events that build community and 4 more things to build hospitality, you have a lot more people engaged and a lot better stewardship effort. One of those community building activities is a thank you event. I know St. Matthew years ago used to have them. They stopped doing it for whatever reason, where they have a big activity center, and we had 150 people there, but it was hors d'oeuvres and soft drinks and all. It wasn't hard liquor just because of the money. But we had a lot of people there. It was neat to see everyone. You got enthused, and you want to stay more involved than ever. So I think you can easily do something outside. Anything else people have questions about in these first 9 sessions and things we talked about, either things you want to do or have done?
Jim, this is Gaydon.
Yep.
We had a ministry fair I guess it was about 4 or 5 weeks ago. And I've been in the parish 11 and a half years, and we've never had a ministry fair. And some of the people who've been here longer said it probably been 15 years. But we had a really good turnout for this. And a lot of people came in, signed up for different ministries, etc. And it was a big success, okay? And one of the things, I looked at it and I thought, we did not have a welcoming committee, okay? One of the ladies who was trying to set one up eventually moved to Arkansas for health reasons. And but I asked around and found someone who wanted to chair the welcoming committee. So last Tuesday, a week ago today, we had a meeting about setting up a welcoming committee, because that's so key from everything you've said. It's so key to making sure that you've got a welcoming parish, obviously. So we got 2 things done right there. We have another meeting next Tuesday, trying to get the welcoming committee rolling. And the goal is to pick 3 things to do this year. Okay.
It'd be good. Even if it's 3 things, you want to, I mean, my bias is you want to do that 2 or 3 weekend effort of you where the people commit their Tom Town treasurer. All the other things around what you do kind of support that. So I think if you even pick 3 things, it's good. And that's 2 examples right there. So I think you're always trying to go another level to get people more engaged. Good point. Anything else on these before we go to the next one?
Well, if you would let me know from a welcoming standpoint, what would be the 3 most important things to do? That you can
tell you what I would do. Dave, let's make a note to send Gaden. I know we have Gaden's email. Let's make a note to send him a couple of the handouts that have a lot of ideas for welcoming. We'll probably have 20, 30 ideas. Then we'll try to pick the ones that make the most sense for you, Gaden. So let's have a meeting after this in the next week or so, and we can go through that list and then ones you particularly like, it might be workable. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I want to pick the right things. Okay.
Yep. And again, it's going to be different for different parishes. We can do that for sure, Gaten, after this. That'd be a great idea.
All right. Thank you.
Hey, Jim.
Anything else? Yep.
I can tell you what our church has done for a welcoming program within the past year and a half. We have a group of people that work on it, and monthly we have a 1 weekend a month. We have a welcoming weekend where they have a special table out welcoming new people with cookies and stuff on it. And then quarterly, they are doing some type of a reception, like between the masses or whatever. And they actually send a personal invitation out to anybody who's joined the parish within that quarter. So that has been
send an email to us on that.
Us.
Send an email on that, Marcia, so we can send to other people. Send us an email what you're doing.
Sure.
But I think to Jean's point earlier, the personal invitation makes a big deal. It's a big deal. So if you have either whether a thank you event or inviting people to come to a reception, I think the probably a invitation in the mail and an email both back to back wouldn't hurt. So I think that's a good idea. Let's go to the next one, Dave, just to give ideas people things to look at. So again, the stewardship day, we had 200 people and went well. You have ideas to mail. I think Dave sent out, I think that there were 5 or 6 PowerPoints. The pastor didn't have one, but I think he sent all the PowerPoints out for everyone's talk. So if you didn't get those PowerPoints or didn't go to the stewardship, email Dave and he can get those to you on that one. Again, this is a commercial, and we can work with other parishes outside the diocese if you want to, but we want every one of our parishes to have a plan giving committee, which is stewardship of assets. So that can be part of your plan. That's another committee separate from the committee on stewardship. And Gaden actually is involved in both at Hendersonville. Just a brief thing on that because it's part of a bigger picture. There's 29 steps we have in our plan for plan giving marketing. I think, Gaden, you've done, 14 or 15 of those. And already had 125 people identify themselves in that parish and school community that are doing something in their state for Hendersonville. So again, we want to do that at some point. We'll talk about that. And again, some people have a tithing committee. If you want to do that, we can talk about ways to get that going. And then the best practices, we'll come back to the book in a few minutes. If you want to do some parish booklet racks, we mentioned, I think, 3 different stewardship brochures from our Sunday Visitor. You can have those put in your pamphlet rack. And then again, we had 6 different ideas of newsletters. It's interesting when you come to communication, which we'll come back when we get to Chuck's X things in a couple minutes with the 8 best practices. The newsletter was one of the most effective ways to communicate. So we have some of our parishes have a newsletter and then incorporate stewardship in it. Our most recent example we received from a parish of Swannanoa. They had a good stewardship newsletter. So if you want a copy of that, if you're thinking about doing a newsletter, 1 year, 3 or 4, 8, 10 things next year, we can send you Swannanoa's. They did a good job on that. We just got a copy of that a couple weeks ago. Let's go to the next page, Dave. So again, we talk about materials. We make that available to you. Next one after that. We already talked, it's more Dawson stuff. Let's let go. It's not so much for this group. Again, focus, move on. We don't talk about that today. Next one. So go back to the book. So if you haven't gotten a copy of this book, I would do it. I mean, you can get it probably on Amazon or Sunday Visitors, but it's about 120 pages. And again, not 4 of us worked with Chuck Zeck in our research back in 2008, but it's still some of the best things out there of what to do and why to do it. So if you don't have that book, I'd probably get it there. We've obviously talked about welcoming. We talked about a stewardship committee, talked about plan, talked about formation. We talked about lay witness. Again, lay witnesses, I would never want to do a 2 or 3 weekend effort without a lay witness making a presentation. Just the lay people add a lot more to the whole thing than just the pastor alone, to be honest with you. Obviously, the pledge comes from the commitment card, communications later, and then again, being accountable. Look at the next one, but get the book if you haven't had it already. It's worth the read. So one of the handouts we have is all the things a pastor can do. So again, if you want to talk about how to get your pastor more engaged, let us know. And I know there was no handouts in the stewardship day in April, but I understand he gave some good ideas on that pastoral. But we do have a handout on that too if you want to copy that. So that's page 15 right now. Let's keep on going. So again, stewardship committee, you want to have one of those underneath the pastoral council. Next, we're going to talk about that. Again, who you're looking for, that's pretty basic. So some of these we already talked about in our stewardship Zoom handouts from the 11 different sessions. I think this is the 12th. Again, we can get copies of annual plans to you. We can tell you about time and talent catalogs we can get to you. Gift discernment. Obviously, you have some stuff that Morthal's doing too, so we get all that to you. Let's go to the next one. So if you want to, on the timing planning, this is again page 19. On the timing plan, we have a 10-week schedule. If you start 10 weeks out, you can get to the commitment Sunday within 7 or 8 weeks and have 2 weeks to follow up. So we can tell you what you do each week in there if you want a copy of that. We said we have copies of lay witness. We can give copies of commitment cards, letters, brochures to you. Homilies, we don't have any copies of those, to be honest with you. Ministry Affair, we have some information. We talked about follow-up. If you want to do a commissioning Sunday, we can give you something on that. So again, just some thoughts on that one. There's stuff in all these. That's just some ideas. Next one is page 20. So this is one of the most important things that you can do. So I think you want to do something on hospitality and welcoming and community building, I think, every single year. So we're going to start with Gabe on just a welcoming handout of ideas. We're going to talk about with him later on as a one-off. Do the other folks here too. Our best handout probably has 60 or 70 ideas of what you can do with this. And maybe you pick 5 of those or 4 of those. And maybe you pick 4 different ones for different parishes. So that's one of our most extensive handouts as far as ideas. And if you want to go through that and talk about that, like we're going to do with Gabe on welcoming, we're happy to do that. But that's a pretty big deal. Next one. So another thing you want, again, you may not do all this the first year. Maybe you do some of this in year 2, year 3. But our most effective stewardship parishes have a meeting usually once a year on a Saturday, usually like from 9 to noon, when they invite all the ministry heads. If you have 20 ministries, 20 ministry heads, maybe a chair and vice chair, maybe 40 people invited. If you have 60 ministries, 60 to 80 to 100 people. And they get some spirituality focus to grow in their faith. They get some leadership training, how to be a better leader, and then are talked about how they do their stewardship job better with trying to get connected to people that want to get involved in ministry and keep them engaged. So parish leader Saturday mornings, we call them, are pretty important. No one's doing this stuff with the kids yet. That can come later. Same with RCIA. If you want to look at a parish stewardship mission, you do that. Let's go back one more on that one, the parish mission. And then one of the things, if you want to take a step, if this isn't your first year, if you haven't done a stewardship in a good while, start with a basic stewardship. But if you've done it like a couple years before, one of the things that's key that we do is ask people to take a step in the letter they get from the pastor and from the pulpit when they have a lay witness speak. And what take a step is, we ask people to look at where they are and the percentage of their income, and do they want to take a step and go another 0.5% or percent? Like my wife and I went from 2% to 10% over 5 years, went 2, 4, 6, 8, 10. Some people go 3, 3.5, 4, 4.5. Take a step. And same with your time. If you're doing 2 hours a month, maybe you want to go to 3 hours a month the next year. So now at some point you reach a max. We've maxed at 10% of our offertory. Some people go higher. But take a step's a pretty good approach. And we talked about in service enough on that one. Let's look at page 22. So again, we have 104 bulletin announcements. We have a lot of questions and answers. I like the idea of an annual report. Could be 4 pages, could be 24 pages. Think about that, particularly for the bigger parishes. We have examples of those. If you want to find some parishes that have good stewardship information on their websites, let us know. We'll try to provide some of those to you, because I think stewardship on your website can be important. Again, you can't do all these things, but you may pick 3, 5, 8, or 10. Next one on that one, Dave. So here's some of the thank yous you want to think about. So to Jean's point, I know some people did this during COVID. Some people have done it since then. But if you ever call people and thank them for their ministry, that's a pretty big deal. I mean, how many thank you calls do you get in your phone every year? Probably not tons. And so if you get a thank you call from your parish for being a lector, a choir member, a catechist, the usher, whatever it is, the family ministry, the ecumenical ministry, the community ministry with the shelter, whatever it is, thank you calls are a big deal. What you could do, and you can't do all these thank yous, but maybe pick one next year. How many times do you get a personal thank you note from someone, handwritten in their ink, so it's kind of slow and you can read it, 3 or 4 or 5 sentences? It's a big deal. That could be a possibility. Some thank you letters, thank you events. We talked about one Jean's going to do. Thank you emails, both personal and general. Thank you in the bulletin announcement. We've had some parishes do thank you robocalls. Now, if you have 100 households in a parish, not worth doing. If you have 2,000 households in a parish, might consider doing it. For those who know, in our diocese, we do a thank you robocall to all the people gave to the DSA, our annual appeal for the diocese, at 3 o'clock on the Wednesday before Thanksgiving. Thank you visit. Thank you for your estate gift. What we're saying to plan giving committees on that is add a simple, anytime you thank anyone for anything in a group, as a bulletin announcement from the pulpit, in the letter, whatever you do on your website, add a phrase, and thank you for always remembering Saint so-and-so in your estate plan. Lay leader thank you calls. Some people have done that where the leaders get called or the lay leaders themselves call, and then volunteers in the bulletin. So again, a lot of ways to thank. Maybe just pick a couple of those to do this year a better job at. And even if you start with, like, say you have 40 ministries, maybe just mail a thank you handwritten note to your 40 ministry heads. Maybe you don't do all the ministries. Maybe it's too much. Still makes a difference. I mean, when you get a thank you note from someone, you remember. I still remember some thank yous I've received from pastors over my lifetime. They just stand out because you don't forget those kind of things. And it gets you more engaged with the parish, so that's a pretty big deal. Annual plan we talked about, focus on the parish, just a couple of things there. Okay, next one, Dave. So again, next one. So what we're going to do with you, Gaden, is we have a list of 19 different ideas of welcoming. So when we talk with you about that, we'll look at that 19 list. You can pick them what you want to do. But here's a couple ones right here. But we'll go through the 19. You pick what you want to do. So that's what we're doing. Welcome to the parishioner. Next one. Again, we have 24 things on ongoing hospitality. Just one of those. We have a parish that finds out the birthdays, not the years. They don't want to get people upset, but the birthdays of every single parishioner. I've worked hard at it, and every single parishioner gets a birthday card from their parish once a year, usually the pastor. I've never had one of those before, but I think it'd make a big impact. If I did, I'd definitely feel more connected to the parish. So again, thank yous. We just talked about phone calls to thank those, or reach out those who haven't come. So again, there's 24 days. Those are 3 of them. The next one, Dave. We have 27 ideas in community building. So really, Jean, your first one is really in that first bullet where you do things. Thanking events is similar to parish picnics, pancake breakfast, except more limited group of people get invited. Some people do a service day, and the third bullet there. And then receptions for special events. I mean, it just can make a big difference. So we'll go through all the. So if you want to go through any of those things, we're happy to sit down with any of those 27, 24, 19 ideas and hey, pick the ones that work for you. I'm sure you can find some for you guys out of that list of many. Next one, Dave, 28. That's just personal stuff. Let's go through that. But I'll tell you what I would do. If more people start doing these things, it would kind of spread to the whole parish because people start thinking of other people. That's the thing you're looking at. So I'm going to go through those today. You've already saw that last time with the presentation. I think there's 9 of those. Let's go to the next page. Yeah, there's 9. You keep on going. So if you want to do something outside the parish, and I know we have a couple parishes in our diocese, and I'm not judging this, I'm just describing it, who have decided to make their ministry just for their own parishioners only and don't do anything outside the parish to help, like a food bank or soup kitchen or homeless shelter or a big brothers big sisters program. They just don't. They don't give any money to things outside the parish either. Some parishes give grants to community groups. Some people like this parish do things overseas. So at least think about that. It wouldn't hurt to set an example for your parish to do something beyond just taking care of yourselves. If there's something you can do outside your parish, either in your community with volunteers or with maybe a grant here and there, financial grant, just think about that. So again, you can't do all these things, but do some of them. Let's go to the next one and see what we got. I think it's just some examples. That's just a big impact. Okay, then if I tell you, if you look, I tell you what, you can email this and we'll find it somewhere. I know that ICSC does like 80 sessions a year for decades. So we can probably find a way, Dave, to make available some of those and maybe some people that did those presentations. So if you find particularly sessions you might like from the past, that'll be a longer term project for us, but we can probably do that though. As far as the DVDs, CDs, at least have some PowerPoints or something available for folks. So we can work over time and do that. Let's go to the next one, Dave. Okay. So I would look at some of these websites. I'd probably look at Arch St. Louis. They have a number of stewardship things there. I know they still do. I'm not sure about Seattle and Wichita. I just don't know. I know Blessed Trinity, we already talked about them, have good things on their website. Mary Magdalene does in Altamonte Springs, Florida. So you could get some of those too. So just some copy ideas from some websites. Let's go to the next one, Dave. Again, remember you went to the Stewardship Day at 100, almost 200 people there. But again, if you want to go to the conference in September, more information about it, we can give you the dates when the sessions come out. We have to do that as well. The other thing you could do, and this is part of that, we could have some additional Zoom meetings for particular topics or maybe with different parishes. So maybe have a committee that wants to meet and talk about this. Maybe we have a Zoom call with a committee. So this is a Zoom call for individuals. We could do a Zoom call for individual parishes and their committees if you want to. So that's a thing we can look at as a possibility as well. Let's go next one, Dave. Again, that's just getting ideas from other people. Next page. So here's some, I don't know how many of these parishes still do a good job in stewardship. I just don't know. I know St. Pius still does some good work, and we talked to some people there about that. I know St. Mary Magdalene does in Altamonte Springs. I know Blessed Trinity in Ocala, Florida does. I don't know some of the others because they've gotten these gifts since so long ago. I imagine St. Agnes is doing good stuff because they just got the award a couple of years ago. But you can look at some models there. Next one, Dave. We're getting close to the end. Okay, so we got through the 45 minutes we tried to do. So the reason I wanted to do this, again, to reiterate, is it's good to come to these stewardship Zoom calls. It's good to come to the Stewardship Day that a number of you went to. But you want to do what Blessed Trinity did. When you get all kind of ideas, 40, 50 ideas, you can't do something with all of them. Again, what they do at Blessed Trinity, they come back and meet as a group and say, and you can do this as an individual, Kelly just presented 40 ideas, 50 ideas, whatever it is. What are to Gaydon's point, the 3 or the 5 or the 8 things we want to do in July to June next fiscal year to take stewardship further along the road? And you have now this PowerPoint you'll get with all these different slides. And so maybe on page 3, you want a copy of this, and page 9, you want a copy of this, and slide 15, you want a copy of that. But do something with what you're doing to take another step. Try to take some of these ideas, and you may take different ideas from different parishes, different people, but that's the purpose of the day, is to kind of review again some of the things we talked about, among other things that over the last couple of years. And now what can you do to incorporate some of those ideas in the July to June plan for next year. And if we can help out with that, email me and Dave will do something to help you guys. So we leave the last 10 minutes or so for any other questions people have, other things you want to talk about today before we wrap up the calls, or anything else y'all can think of and want to talk about today.
Yeah, Jim. So for example, at our parish, we do on a timely basis newcomer socials, right, for the people who just registered in the last 2 months to the parish. And we also do ministry socials where we offer some coffee and donuts, and we usually have 3 or 4 ministries present there, so that parishioners get an opportunity to look at what's happening in the parish, and maybe they may be interested in signing up for a ministry. But despite all that, one point that I wanted to bring up, it's not sufficient. It's not just good enough to do these activities. What's the saying? The meaning of insanity is you keep doing the same thing over and over, expecting change. We are looking at right now at changing how we do each of these activities, right? So, and I've told, they're simple changes. They don't have to involve a lot of money, but I know that we always offer the infamous coffee and donuts. And I've spoken to our ministries coordinator, and I've told her, listen, I think we can come up with something different. I said, it doesn't have to be expensive. I said, and we need to get something involved here. I don't know, like some sort of activity where they laugh or they get involved. And it's not just coming to a table, having a cup of coffee and some donuts, and then we give them a brochure. You got to spice it up. And I think that as we look at year in, year out, you say, okay, how can we do things different this year? That was one of the things I wanted to bring up.
I think that's important. So if you look at just one of the areas to talk about is community building and hospitality. We had a list, I think, of probably 70 things between welcoming, hospitality, and community building. So maybe you stop doing one occasionally and do something new. So there's a lot of ideas there. And you guys may have 10 ideas I don't have on that list. You say, hey, there's something else we're doing. It's not on the list, and the list gets expanded. But that's that point. I think you could, if there's 19 different ways, maybe do 2 or 3 and then do different ones the next year. So you want to have some kind of way to keep it fresh. I mean, if you send thank you notes to people every 6 months in your parish, it become rote after a while. So maybe do something else. So I think it makes sense to look at those lists of that 19, 24, and 27, those different things from that one handout to keep it fresh. Agreed. Like you would never have the same lay witness every year do a presentation for Stewardship Day. You have different lay witnesses who have different stories to tell. So I think that keeping it fresh and variety, I think, is a good idea. Just like one example we gave at the talk I gave, you've heard this before too, just when you welcome people at Mass coming in the side door or the main entrance, some people just say good morning like 50, 60, 80 times. That's kind of rote. Again, this one parish had 7 different phrases they said one after the other. So unless you stood there for 15 seconds, you heard a fresh comment every time it seemed like you saw someone. So there's always ways to make it fresh and new ideas. And plus you got to hear some other people. That list had 9 or 10 things. Now it has 70 from people giving us ideas over time. So good point. Wow. Other questions before we wrap up in about 10 minutes related to any of the discussion we had today, or things we didn't talk about that you have a question about or want to comment on? I mean, the key thing is to be persistent and keep on trying to do things in your stewardship effort every single year. What happens too often is people do it, then take a year or 2 off, then start it again. And that's better than not doing it at all, but it's always better to try to keep things going, but also keep it fresh. I think that's a big deal. It really is. Any other thoughts or questions before I wrap up today?
Thank you very much.
We'll go back to the 3 things in a session in July 8th. Next time, I just want to take a little bit different approach today. To reiterate what we talked about is one of the things at the Stewardship Day, and then think of ways to be more effective in your stewardship efforts. And if you have anything you're doing, again, we know that Mooresville's doing those spiritual gifts on their own. If anyone's doing anything unique or different, you really like it, I think it's effective, go ahead and send an email to us. We're always trying to gather more ideas and more information. So think about that too, if you could, if that makes sense. Okay. Anything else? I think we're good. Deacon, you want to give us the blessings to wrap up today?
Yes. The Lord be with you.
And with your spirit.
Good.
May Almighty God bless us all, the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit.
Amen.